Hey everyone, my name's Glenn Chisholm. I'm one of the founders here at Obsidian, and I'm also run the product team. I just want to talk to you about zero trust and how we think about zero trust in the modern world. In the last few years, people have really started to embrace zero trust, bring it into their network architectures, and think about that as an overall security sort of go-to plan. These are all fabulous things. We see an absolute improvement in zero trust and in security from the use of zero trust. And it's something that we see an evolution of. Obviously we started out where we were very building centric. We moved into branch offices. We moved a lot of remote. COVID pushed us into that remote in a really significant way. We've also seen a lot of movement from on-prem data centers to infrastructure as a service, as well as SaaS. So as we think about zero trust, what are we really trying to do? We're trying to say, look, don't trust just because someone's in a particular location, using a particular device, et cetera, et cetera. We want to never trust and always verify. And we want to do that in a really, really thoughtful way. So instead of a situation where if you're on-prem, you can access a service. If you're at a branch office, you can access a service. But if you're remote, you have to use a VPN. You have to use multi-factor. What we say is no, it doesn't matter where you are. You have to use multi-factor. If you want to access a resource in this data center, you're going to have to use multi-factor authentication and authenticate and prove who you are. In this data center, we're not going to trust the data center devices to talk to each other. We're going to make sure that we have a perimeter. We're going to make sure that we have controls within that data center that allow us to segment it, manage the security, and say that we have very defined interfaces between everything in this environment. So we know who everyone is, even resources, and the resources themselves have to authenticate. As we move to this infrastructure as a service world, well, we can do exactly the same thing. We can say that you have to use multi-factor. We can build the same internal and external perimeters. We can force authentication between these devices to make a difference. When we move to SaaS, what we see a lot of people do is say, oh, I'm going to use multi-factor. I'm going to use single sign-on. This is not zero trust. This is implicitly trusting SaaS, and that's not something we should be doing. If we do that, we are not carefully thinking about the interfaces between applications. We're only thinking about the user to the application. We're not thinking about what's happening in the application or what's happening between the applications and other applications. We're really only thinking about 1/3 of the problem, and that is a major issue. So as we start to think about that, what do we have to do? Well, we have to look inside the application, understand who has access to what, understand how these applications are configured, provide the appropriate set of capabilities. So as we think about zero trust, what do we need to do? We need to have continuous verification of every element. So we need to make sure that if these applications connect to other applications, we know who, what, when, how, and what permissions they have. We need to force that to be authenticated appropriately. We want to limit the impact of a breach. We want to be very aware of the configurations, the privileges, and the overall posture of these applications. So we can make sure that if there's a breach, the breach is narrowly constrained, it accesses the minimum amount of data possible, and affects the minimum amount of resources we can possibly control. And then we need to collect behavioral data. What we want to do is to make sure that every single one of these applications, we're extracting behavioral data, just as we do in infrastructure as a service, just as we do in the data center, just as we do with EDR on the endpoints. We must extract data to understand what's happening inside these applications on a continuous basis. If we do that, and we have a breach, we know what happened, to whom, when, and we can understand what resources were exposed, what data was exposed, and make the right decisions for our customers and regulators. We want to bring zero trust around SaaS and bring SaaS into our zero trust architecture and think about it as we think about all of our elements. Obsidian provides the capability to not only understand what applications your applications are connecting to, help you understand whether or not they're properly configured, how they're privileged, and then what's happening in those on a continual basis to allow you to detect, manage, mitigate, and prevent a breach and bring these applications into a zero trust environment. Thanks very much. If you want more information and understand more about what Obsidian does, please go look at our website, obsidiansecurity.com.